We are live at CPAC 2021, and we are in Dallas, Texas. And I am here with Attorney General Ken Paxton. Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Been a great day.
Yes, sir. It's been a great event. What did you think about this weekend?
I thought it was really amazing. I love having it in Dallas. Obviously, it's never been here before, as far as I know. They've always had it in Washington, and of course, last winter they had it in Florida because Washington was shut down. This is a great location. It's the center of the country. It's easy for people to get to it. Of course, Dallas is really open.
Yes, sir. So, Ken, tell us a little bit about father's rights. I heard you are a very big proponent of father's rights, and I've heard some good things that you've done for the parents here in the state of Texas.
So I am a father. So I have 4 children myself. So I think father's rights and parents' rights should be equal. I mean, there should be no favoritism. Mother and father should be treated equally, and I totally believe that fathers have every right to see their children and be a part of their children's life. I think all the research indicates that fathers play an extremely important role in the upbringing of their children, and then the results of how those children turn out.
Did you hear what happened earlier this year with House Bill 803?
I never remember numbers. Even when I was in the House and Senate, I never kept track of numbers.
It was the shared parenting bill.
Okay.
There was close to 200 parents that showed up to the Capitol trying to get that equal parenting bill going. And it seemed like no matter how many people showed up, and I think there was like 30 different sponsors on it, they got blocked. They never even got into the next level. And I know these guys are really wanting to see something going, but they're not too sure where to turn. It seems like we kind of hit a roadblock with it.
Yeah, and every legislative session is different. My wife was part of a bill that I had tried to pass, and Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor, tried to pass for decades. She was the one that got it done. So a lot of times, things like this that are different, that people are not used to, it's persistent, it's continuing to go back, it's continuing to try new ways. And look, I wouldn't give up.
Do you have any solutions on maybe some things that these parents and the ones that was trying to organize those efforts could do to maybe really get that process moving a little bit more forward?
So I think it's all about spending the time up front. It's about meeting with your legislators, your senator, your House member, trying to find the right people to carry the bills. It's really important who carries them. And it's important to have somebody that understands the process in both House and Senate. They're very different. Somebody that understands the House may not understand the Senate. They're very different. Most senators don't know how the House works, and most House members don't know how the Senate works. So it's important. I've been in both. It's important to understand both and understand that process, because then you'll pick the right people to shepherd your bill through. And you've got to put the time in. The legislative process is not easy. It was not designed to be easy. It was designed to be very difficult to get things passed. It's just the system we have.
So I heard you've been a big warrior on parental rights here in the state of Texas as to giving the power back to the parents and taking the government back out where they've been trying to step in. Could you tell us a little bit about that process and what's going on?
Absolutely. Nobody knows better how to raise their children than the parents. Unless there's some type of abuse or some type of crime going on or something very bad going on with the parent and the child relationship, it really is up to the parents. They have the greatest incentive to take care of those kids. And they should be given that this is their responsibility. It's their God-given responsibility. It's not the government's job to step in and run the lives of these parents or these children unless there's been some type of abuse or some type of bad situation that needs to be addressed.
I heard you've also been against gag orders. I've heard about these unconstitutional gag orders that are going on in the state of Texas telling parents they can't speak up.
I think that's crazy. I think it's unconstitutional. It's wrong for parents to be stopped from talking, exercising their free speech rights, unless there's some extraordinary circumstance that would harm the child. I don't see any benefit to the family relationship to shutting parents out.
And Mr. Paxton, are you familiar with the Jeff Younger case?
Not as familiar as you are, I'm sure.
Right. So they've been trying to gender transition his son since he was 7 years old.
I remember
And the fact that this is even going to court and it's been ruled in mom's favor to move forward with this, it seems like we're pushing child abuse inside of the courts.
No, I think that is wrong. There's no way that a child that young should be pushed into this. There's no way that a parent's rights on the other side, before such a major change is made, should be ignored. And in this case, it clearly seems to be happening that parents' rights are being ignored. That child should make that decision when they're 18, not when they're 7. That shouldn't be done when they're 7 or 8 or 9.
I think one of the biggest shocks about that is going on in the state of Texas. You would think that would not be going out of all the states that this could be going on. It's going on in the state of Texas.
Remember, judges are elected. Different judges in different areas of the state operate differently. Some of them follow the law, some of them don't. Some of them care about parents' rights. Some of them care about these transgender issues more than others. And it just depends on what judge you get as to whether they're going to follow the law or ignore what's going on here, which is, I don't think a child should be forced to do anything until it's their decision and they're of age.
So let's talk about the fatherless issue. That's one of the big things we talk about on the show. I think it's been really popular as of late. That conversation's starting to go on more and more. But it's coming from the angle of dads are deadbeats or don't want to be in their children's lives. And we see in the divorce industry right now, I think it's up to $60 billion, which shows if these guys were deadbeats and weren't wanting to fight for their kids, we wouldn't have that industry. These guys, some of these guys are fighting tooth and nail. We see what Jeff Younger went through. I got another friend here in Dallas that spent $600,000 over 11 years just to get 50-50 with his child. And some of the lengths that they're having to go through just to be a dad, I just don't understand what's going on.
That to me is not right. And that's probably partly structural in the law, partly individual judges, but that's certainly not the way it should be. It should not be costing a fortune to be a father and be part of your child's life, nor should it be for the mother. They should both have access, and they should both have a part in that child's life because, again, research shows that it's really important that both parents be involved if there's any way possible.
Yeah, Mr. Paxton, let me ask you a question. I should have started off the show with this. What does being a dad mean to you?
It's one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had. I've got 4 amazing children. I have a son who's 28, who's a software engineer designing self-driving cars out in San Francisco. I've got another daughter she's an intelligence officer in the Air Force dealing with special forces unit. She's also a nurse. I've got another daughter who's dyslexic, and she's teaching dyslexic children now as a teacher, and has our first grandchild. And then I've got another daughter who's a student at Texas A&M. So it's been fun to watch them grow. It's been fun to be a part of their lives. And now it's fun to be more of an advisor. Like they call for advice, whereas when they were 16, they didn't want any advice. So it's been really enjoyable for me, fulfilling that role.
Yes, sir. So I think another thing that gets a lot of attention is the federal incentives. I know they talk about Section 8 and some of the incentives of having the father out of the home. Title 4D is really the big elephant in the room that a lot of people discuss, and they believe that is incentive that is really fueling that family court industry. Could you tell us a little bit about the Title 4D process, to your knowledge, and what purpose that serves?
So I think part of the goal is to provide resources so that families can stay together. It should not be designed to create incentives. And I know there are a lot of federal incentives that work just the opposite. They create an incentive to have more children, and then the fathers come in to collect the money, and they're gone. That's certainly not the incentives we want to create. We want to allow people to be self-sufficient as much as possible and use as little of government resources as possible. But there, of course, parents who need some help with their children.
Yeah. What do you think about no-fault divorce? Do you think that really kind of played into what we're seeing with the divorce rate and the amount of fatherless homes?
There's no doubt. No-fault divorce has created issues in our society and made divorce relatively easy, relatively prevalent, and it probably was not the greatest design to come up with no-fault divorce.
Right. Yeah, do you think there's some type of reform or the Title 4D? I believe that's an issue. I know going back to that. From what I'm told, there is incentives that come from the federal government back to the states off of how much is collected in child support, and we're feeling like with those type of incentives, it really gives us room for that corruption inside a family court. I understand where the idea came from, especially when no-fault divorce came and divorce just skyrocketed. But along the way, it seems like in a lot of these states, some of the amounts of child support I'm seeing these guys have to pay, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, there's certainly a balance here of fathers being responsible for their children, having to pay some amount of help, and then being overburdened and making it impossible where they end up in jail and they can't even pay. So we don't have a perfect system. Whenever you have money involved from the federal government, the state, you're going to have perverse incentives that don't set things up exactly right. It's a really unfortunate situation, but I do think that dads should be responsible and should do as much as they can to help their children.
Absolutely, and I know there's times where there's going to need to be that, but it's not always the dads. We know there's just as many deadbeat moms as there are dads in different situations, and there's no one size fits all. Unfortunately, right here in the state of Texas, from what I'm told, 91% of the time, dad's going to end up a non-custodial parent. Those are some very high numbers.
No, I do think that's a very high number, and it's unfortunate because, as I've said, I think the dads are just as important as the mothers playing a role in their children. And I think statistically that's shown that children that have their fathers involved in their lives are much less likely to be involved in crime, much more likely to be successful in life. And I think dads play a very significant role, and it shouldn't be 91%. custody, there should be more of a balance in custody.
Yes, sir. General Paxton, I just want to say thank you for coming and talking about this. You know, I think a lot of times people see you as the Attorney General and they see the Title 4D going on, and they might not have been as receptive to hear what we're talking about right now. And that's why I think this is such an important thing. When I met you back in March, I told everybody, I was like, he was a really nice guy. And I said, I think if we could start having these conversations and finding what's going on. I think sometimes, you got these parents that have been a part of this system. Yeah. They're angry. Yep. They want to be a dad, and for somebody that's paid so much money and they go up against the system and feel like they're getting no results, that turns into more anger, and then it comes on social media and you see some of the other stuff we've got going on.
Sure, that makes sense to me, but part of my job, I don't get to make the law. I have to follow whatever law is given to me. And so I have a responsibility to enforce whatever laws that I've been given by the legislature, by the Constitution, and so I may not like the law. That's the job of the legislature to change it and for people to lobby the legislature. And I have to enforce laws many times that I don't agree with, but I am the enforcer. I'm not the guy that gets to change the law.
Yeah, and let me ask you, is it your role to enforce Title 4D?
It is our law, yes, it is our job to enforce the Title 4D. It is our job to make sure that parents get the money that they're supposed to get under the law.
But it is just your job to enforce that. Like you said, if anything's going to change, it's got to be done through the legislature.
That is the process. Elected representatives of the people have to make that change.
So for any of these parents that are wanting to see that system change, what are some solutions you could tell to them? I know, one, we got to have people that will step up and try to fight against this system. And if you got somebody in office that isn't doing their job, well, guys, you're going to have to run against it. But what are some solutions you could say to them if they wanted to see some change in that system?
Here's what I say. It's easy to complain about the system and not do anything to change the system. So you have to be willing to get involved. You have to be willing to help people get elected. I mean, if you help somebody get elected, they're much more likely to listen to you, right? So I think there's a lot of people. I mean, if you take all the people on child support and 10% of them got involved in the process, guess what? They would have a major impact on what happens with those laws as it relates to child support, taking care of children. They would have immense power.
What would be your role as it comes to child custody? Do you have anything to do with that?
I have nothing to do with child custody.
Yeah. So I just wanted our viewers to know that. Sometimes I think that gets a little bit mixed up. And I just want to say thank you for coming and sitting down and talking with us. And hopefully we can have some more conversations coming up. And it's been a great CPAC. Mr. Paxton, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.